Welcome to the Rising Society podcast. I'm Shane Kennedy.
I'm Nico Galliano, the rejected gentleman.
And we are joined by...
Michael Kennedy. Good evening.
Nice.
All right, so tonight, we don't really have a particular topic in mind. I'm just going to start off with a quote.
Okay.
And then we're just going to riff.
All right.
Okay, so it's here, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. So, David Bowie once said, "I always had a repulsive need to be something more than human." What the hell does that mean?
Oh,
I know. I read a book about him, and I discovered that all of the content in the book is related to him with the loss of his father. So when he wrote that song, Space Oddity, and there are a couple other songs that he's written, like 5 years, it's about the Earth's going to end in 5 years and we get invaded by aliens, and Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, the whole album that he did, all of that was about the death of his father. So him being in a tin can, like in Space Oddity, that reflected his way to express the loss of his father. Wow. I think what you just said is partially, or not partially, it's totally related to the death of his father. That is where the majority of his music was that he elaborated on that with his music.
He was an interesting character overall.
Oh, fascinating.
What he did for music, I don't know if you guys listen to like local radio, like A Cat Named Mo. He's on the like a local rock station. Yeah. He's huge into David Bowie. He actually just did. I know on I think it's Netflix came out with the Bowie documentary recently. Mm-hmm. So did he, and they take like different aspects of Bowie's life, and they're both phenomenal. He was very interesting. What he did for music is kind of like I know people say this is blasphemous, but what David Bowie did a transform music. No different than like, bands like what the Beatles did, trying new things and like introducing our Queen. Just, stuff that's never been done before. It wasn't your same old rock and roll that everyone was used to. And
the unique thing is he did it all by himself.
Correct.
The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Mamas and the Papas, all of those groups were 4 and 5 people, maybe 6 in their groups. He did it all by himself.
Would you say that David Bowie is someone that transcends a genre, or would you say that he is the best of a particular genre?
That is an interesting question.
Wow.
Yeah, that one's deep, actually.
I'm a deep thinker,
Because he was so unique.
Because the thing is, when you mention the name David Bowie, you don't start thinking about other musicians that are like him. You can only think about him. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If I were to say to you the Beatles, you in the back of your mind you might start thinking about other bands that were part of the British invasion. Mm-hmm. You might think about the Monkees, or you might start thinking about some of the other ones. Yeah. But with David Bowie, I guess my question would be what genre would he be a part of, or would you say that he's bigger than a genre? You know what I mean?
I think he's way bigger than a genre, because I think 100 years from now, 150 years from now, someone will be looking into his music and saying, this guy was so revolutionary in his verbiage of music and his ideology of all his songs. I totally think so.
Now, David Bowie was originally from the UK, right?
According to what I read, I don't know what part of England. I forgot that, but he's from England.
Okay.
From UK.
And I do agree with Uncle Mickey on that, because in 100 years, and that's how you want to think of history, right? 100, 150, 200-year terms, right?
Yeah.
I do agree that when they look back, they're not going to talk about, like, Billy Idol, for instance, right? Like, even though I love Billy Idol, they're not going to talk about him. Are they going to be mentioning... They might mention this guy, but overall, like, is Meatloaf going to be... I love Meatloaf, right? I love the band.
Yeah.
But he's
great
right.
Music.
When you think David Bowie, though, like, there's kids that still today talking about him, and they're not talking about Meatloaf. They're not talking about these other guys we love. So I think he's right. In 100 years, he is a guy that will stand out, and it will be after that time period that you're talking about with the Beatles and the Stones. I know they all ran, but I'm talking that earlier, you had the Beatles, and then after that whole British invasion, and you're like, David Bowie does stand after that. He is alone. That is interesting.
Well, so what? So the Labyrinth, which that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
One of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, David Bowie and Jim Henson coming together. But I guess so. I don't know a whole lot about the background of the Labyrinth. I know that I think there was a Netflix documentary that came out recently about it. But how in the world did David Bowie end up in that movie? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that David Bowie had other opportunities to be involved in different movies. And maybe he had been involved in other movies previous to that or whatever. Maybe he had been involved in different shows like on Broadway and stuff. I have no idea, but do you guys know what the origin of that was? Like how he initially got connected to Jim Henson?
I do not.
That I do not, but
why don't I look that up and then you guys just keep talking?
Okay, because my theory is going to be it had to be revolved around. He's very autistic. Wow, artistic, right?
Former special education teacher.
Yep.
Yes.
Correct. And I'm just used to saying it, right? He was. That's something that I could see was just weird enough and revolutionary enough, right? Because at that time we didn't even have Dark Crystal, right? Did we have Dark Crystal yet?
I'll look that up.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a movie that even if it's been done, before, it's not done in mainstream. So I think that's something he would be interested in attaching himself to. Plus, what do they have to pay? 2 fucking actors? Everyone else is a Muppet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, I'm surprised there has not been a musical production done, just like Broadway, about David Bowie and his music and his vision of everything, about being attacked by aliens and with the controversy with the UFOs today going on and everything. That would be a great time to bring it in, because that's what his music is about: invasion by people and people coming in with the Earth going to exist 5 years and that's it. And if you listen to a lot of the lyrics of his songs, he depicts all that in his music. But I'm surprised there has not been a major production. And I said to myself 30 years ago, because I am a vocalist and I love to sing David Bowie songs. I'm not as good at it now as I was when I was younger, and I had a much heavier range and a little more strength in my voice. But yeah, that's how I feel about his music.
No, go ahead, Shane.
So Jim Henson met David Bowie in the summer of 1983 to seek his involvement in the movie. I guess David Bowie was in the United States at the time, touring in the Serious Moonlight tour in 1983. Okay. Does that sound right?
Yes. You know what song that comes from?
What?
The Serious Moonlight. I'll get it in a minute. Keep talking. I'll think of it.
And that's how David Bowie was offered the position of Jareth in the movie.
The Goblin King.
Yeah. Yep. The Goblin King.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, and The Dark Crystal came out in 1982.
So it was before.
Yeah, but David Bowie was not in The Dark Crystal.
No.
Right?
I was saying that kind of film.
Yeah.
And I know there was a couple others, but those are the two that you think of standalone. Unless there's one I'm missing. You think Labyrinth, Dark Crystal for puppeteering, right? Is that a word, puppeteering? Puppeteering, right? I don't know. What's the maestro of puppets, Shane? A puppeteer?
A puppeteer.
Yeah, he's a
puppeteer, of course.
Puppeteering, yeah.
I got it. Let's Dance. The Serious Moonlight.
Let's
and
dance.
If you say run, I'll run with you.
Yep, that's
the
it.
Serious Moonlight.
Yes. Well, in Labyrinth, he does the dance, magic dance. Dun, dun,
Yep.
It's not. Yes.
Yeah,
that is badass.
It's.
What are your thoughts on Labyrinth? Ooh.
When was the last time you saw Labyrinth?
I've never seen the movie.
Really?
Nope.
Really?
And only the album that David Bowie did.
Oh, you got to see.
Well, what we have to do is watch it, and then we have to do a follow-up podcast after you have seen it.
I watch the movie at least twice a year.
Yeah.
It's so good. Since I was 6 years old.
So David Bowie's... So Labyrinth... David Bowie was actually in quite a few movies.
Yeah, and I can think of several songs that he wrote about space and space invasion and all of that stuff, but I don't need to do that. But
his first film appearance was in Theater 625. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Theater 625. That's not the futuristic one?
I'm assuming it was futuristic. That sounds like a futuristic name, but it came out in 1968, and it was a television series. He was also in...
No, that's not what I'm thinking of then. I'm thinking Space Odyssey 3000. That was the one with the robots and shit, right?
He was in Just a Gigolo
Just a Gigolo?
in 1978.
Okay.
He was in The Snowman.
Yes. The Falcon and the Snowman?
I think it's just called The Snowman.
I think, yeah, but the song that he sang was called This Is Not America. This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la, little piece of you, little piece of me will die. Yeah, he wrote a song, but it's called, it's from the Falcon and the Snowman movie.
He played Pontius Pilate in The Last Temptation of Christ.
Uh-oh.
Huh?
That's wild.
Maybe Pontius Pilate talked him into creating the album Labyrinth.
And then he was also in...
Just answer that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
He was also in Zoolander in 2001. But
Was he?
Yeah, I'm really surprised at all the different things that he was in. He was also in Twin Peaks.
When did he pass?
2016.
It was that long
Yeah,
already?
he passed away in 2016, it says.
Damn, I was thinking 3-4 years. It's been, wow.
I know,
Yeah.
it goes so fast.
Cancer.
Tom Petty's
I
been
know,
dead
was it cancer of some
a couple
sort?
years now, right? Tom Petty and Michael Jackson. I feel like we were just at that party.
Yeah, the
And
Michael
what was
Jackson.
that, 12 years ago?
Yeah,
Well-
2009 he died.
My neighbor across
Longer.
the street was this lead singer for Vanilla Fudge.
Vanilla Fudge.
And when I was over there doing some singing with him one night, he shared with me how when he did one of the shows in New York, they said, you have to wait till this gentleman goes on. He says, and I looked over and it was David Bowie. And he said he was extremely quiet, didn't make much eye contact with people, but very, very calm and very quiet. He didn't get really a chance to talk to him or anything. He just said hello, and he went hello, and that was about it. But yeah, then security was so tight then that's, he didn't have a chance to say much to him.
Wow.
Well, it's still awesome, though. Holy shit.
Oh, yeah.
That's for well, it's still just to kind of circle back. David Bowie was definitely a what do they call them, like a triple threat, or a where they can sing, act,
Dance? You looking for dance?
yeah, dance.
Yeah.
I saw him dance in the Labyrinth.
He could dance,
yeah.
man.
He could, but his vocal quality and was just off the charts to me. But another thing with David Bowie is a lot of people are probably not fans of him because of his femininity in some of his music, or the looks of being feminine, or just
Like eccentric?
bohemian,
Yeah.
esoteric, all that eccentric. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I've been studying my dictionary. I haven't made up to the letter E yet, but I'm on letter D.
You're getting close.
But yeah, so
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. The favorite thing about Labyrinth, though, is if you got to watch the movie. I want you to see if you notice this. I almost don't want to ruin it for you. Every scene David Bowie comes in, like the very next scene, I want you to watch from the beginning of the movie to the very end where he finally, credits roll. His crotch gets bigger. It's like they're stuffing it. By the end of that thing, it looks like there's a watermelon in his pants. I'm not kidding. The beginning's normal guy. By the end of it, it's so obnoxiously big that you're like, dude, what is going on here?
When is the first time he sees Jennifer Connelly in the movie?
Dude, early.
Okay.
They never acknowledge it either. It's not like talked about. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're just like, dude, what is going on? But when you're 6, you don't realize that. As an adult, you're just like, what's in the Goblin King's pants? What's good? I mean, like, dude. Yeah.
he was very creative in that field, I think, and I did not take it as sexual content as much as I did again alien. He's going back to his escape from his father's death. Everything he did gave him the creativity he needed to develop these characters. There was one time he had an arm here and an arm coming out, and he looked like an alien freak. And he just and it was all in blue and yellow, and it was weird. But and of course he had one, I think, green eye and one blue eye.
Was he born like that?
Yes, I think it was green and blue, if not brown and blue. But I think it's green and blue or hazel and blue.
So
He had two different eye colors.
So what was
course
his take on aliens?
What was what?
David Bowie's take on aliens.
Well, let me give you a phone call and I'll get back to you on the next podcast on that. I'll give him a call. And
Okay.
I have no idea.
Well, because so the only thing I know about him and aliens is that he would talk about aliens, and he would usually, that was usually kind of a part of the background of the different stories that he would tell through his music, right? And through.
I wish we had time for me to sing the whole song called 5 Years, but the words of it is about that invasion. And then, of course, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars and Moon Age Daydream. Do you know that song?
That one I'm
Freak
not.
out in a Moon Age Daydream, oh yeah.
That one I'm not familiar with.
Ooh, that's all on the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust. And Ziggy Stardust was a character that looked just like David Bowie did when he got these funky outfits that he created and put together. It looked the same.
Is that the one where he had the red hair and the star in his eye?
One of them.
Was okay.
Yes. Yes. You never knew what he was going to come up with. But you know what? His whole idea of being a paradox is what made him. He's a total paradox.
So the whole notion, the whole alien invasion thing, did he view that as being a bad thing, or did he view the alien invasion thing as being something hopeful or good, or did he just view it as being something neutral?
No, it's, I can't get to you, Dad. I lost you, Dad. I can't get to you. So I'm going to go through these alien characters to try to communicate with you. Oh. That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Because in
very
spa-
literal on that. It's symbolic, is
In-
what Uncle Mickey's saying.
Yeah, because in Space Oddity, because he says, so here am I sitting in a tin can, far from the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. He lost his dad. There's nothing he can do about it. So he's going to create them to help him figure out his connection. It's a connection, let's say. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
a connection with his dad. Maybe this will work because nothing else has.
Would he say because his dad has passed on to like an alien world, that he's trying to look more like an alien to try to?
Well, I'm going to go off the target a little bit here, off the subject in a way, because my oldest son was very close to his grandfather, who died when he was 8 years old. And when he died and passed, I know that my son was so close to him and didn't know how to deal with the death of him. He went right into music about 3 years later, when he was at a middle school and this boy was playing a guitar for practice. And he turned around and looked at him and gave him the strangest look. And then he ended up being a very big rock star in Las Vegas for a few years.
Big time.
Yes. So I forgot what I was saying.
I think
was that-
you're saying that when someone comes across something that they necessarily can't express or comprehend, they go through. I think what you're trying to say is they express themselves through music, correct?
Yes. If you look at any musician, you take probably 75-80% of them, they lost a parent, both parents, loved ones, had very tragic events in their lives at a young age. The majority of them, overwhelming majority. That's what gives them the ability to create and a type of feel to express, what happened. That's what I personally believe.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I'm a big fan of blues music, is because of that whole movement of the blues. And that's what a lot of those English guys before the British invasion, they'd hear these blues players play, and all they did was they took that, and there's so much emotion in the songs. It really moves you. It's so sad, but it still almost moves your body, that they literally just speeded up the same notes of blues music, made it a lot faster. They didn't even change the concept of the sadness of it necessarily, even though in later years it became very happy. They just speeded it up, and people couldn't stop moving, and that's how you got rock and roll. Exactly. Like, it's beautiful. So I couldn't agree with you anymore. Like, music makes you move for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason that you physically can't control your body.
And what I meant to say before is the lyrics of my son's songs demonstrate his feelings for the loss of his grandfather.
Which is a beautiful
Which is
thing.
what David Bowie did. So we don't know. Obviously, he must have been close to his father, or maybe never got to know his father very well, like myself. There's a lot of reasons we don't know, but God gave him a gift, and the gift was transition his thoughts and abilities into music, which, as I say, I wish I was directing a musical performance by him today. That would have been my desire in life at this point in my life. But I sing at church, so I'm happy with it.
Beautiful too.
Hey, beautiful. Well, that's awesome.
So, all right, Nico, what do you have to throw out?
So are we done with the David Bowie?
Are we?
We're just moving to the next segment.
Well,
that was on music?
Well, it doesn't have to be completely unrelated to David Bowie or unrelated to music. You just keep the riff going.
Well, I don't know how personal we want to get, because we all have very similar things that we're interested in, very similar things that we have done in life. I don't know what direction we want to take this. It's up to you. Oh, Uncle Mick, you got to try that Irish whiskey for everyone watching.
Oh, so first thing.
Misha Er. That in Gaelic means my dearest Ireland. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one.
Is there anything left in there?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to try this. Shane, you got to hurry up and try this, man.
Well, here. I'm still polishing off.
As us Irish say, sláinte.
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 So right now I'm drinking Jameson Orange. This shit is really, really good.
Surprisingly, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Big fan.
All right.
So, yeah, this is smooth. It's smooth. We can just transition to a lot of things, Shane.
All right, here.
I mean, where do you...
Just throw something out.
All right. Do you guys want to get into like a conversation that we all played a filled in our past without getting too specific? Like, I don't know where we're going with this.
Just throw something out.
Okay, let's go with the future and where we think our youth. All right, for instance,
Oh, boy.
we all have heavily invested in the youth of the future, I would say. Me least of all, but you two most of all. Where do you think, the next... I love history, right? But history repeats itself. Where do we see the youth, for instance, in the next 25 to 100 years, that time frame? I know that seems crazy because it's literally, we're talking about two different generations between
You mean what the youth of 25 years from now are going to be like, or what the youth of now are going to be like in 25 years?
Morality, these things that we've all invested in heavily. It doesn't matter how we've done it, but people know, we've talked in the past, we've all invested heavily in this. Where do you guys see that? Because I feel like we've talked about that, right? Like the last generation always talks about this new generation and so on and so on and so on. But I think we are seeing some moral decay and maybe not as their mental capacity is invested in different areas, if you will, right? Electronics play a much bigger part today than they did our parents' generation, right? So I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Where do you guys see that?
Well, moral decays have always existed since the beginning of mankind. So it's going to sporadically happen in different eras, different periods of time. There's no way to stop it. It's just the way that human beings are. Just like, unfortunately, man has a tendency to kill when it comes for reasons of land or raw materials, oil, or you have this that I don't need, or drugs and this and that. So
I actually think, and I know this is going to sound very very simple, I guess, is our society. I think as our society has grown less Christian, we dignify humans less. You know, look at prior to Christ's incarnation. You look at the standard culture of the Greeks and Romans. You know, the Romans borrowed a lot of it from the Greeks. It was very normal for, like, pedophilia was a very normal. That was a normal part of life for a lot of people at that time. That time, slavery was just a normal part of life. Nobody thought that there was anything wrong with slavery. And then what you end up having is, and there have been a lot of hiccups along the way. Definitely, there have been ebbs and flows, and moral, morale, or we grew more moral over periods of time, and then we grew less moral over periods of time. But overall, I think that we view people as being more important after Christ comes, and so I guess to kind of bring everything back to what we were just saying about moral decline. If you go back to the early 1800s, you call that the Romantic period. Like a bunch of like poets and short story writers.
Depends on what European country you lived in, because Romanticism, the Renaissance, and all of those different artistic and political movements depended on where you lived in Europe. That affected the years where it happened. Because, for example, Spain and Portugal were always last in all of Europe.
Yeah.
When you read Spanish and Portuguese history, the British, the Scottish, the Germans, the Northern Europeans, the Swedes, they all had already had that happen. And it always happened last. So I was not cutting you off.
Oh, no.
What I meant to say was, when you said that was the Romance period, in certain countries it was, but when you look at those periods in Europe, you have to compare them to other countries so that you don't get confused on the time periods. Because no, it wasn't, because in this country it was the Baroque period, or this was neoclassicism, or this was this or that. So
I guess what I'm talking about is the Romantic movement, the Romantic movement of in the literary sense, which kind of, what happens a lot of the time is your thinkers and artists are usually the first ones to start a movement, and then it percolates through the rest of culture, right? And you had people like Nathaniel Hawthorne and people like that, and on the state side it was Nathaniel Hawthorne, on the Lord Byron and all those other people in Europe that were part of the Romantic movement. And there was definitely moral decay at that time, but then that was followed by the Victorian period, where everybody became very, very tight-laced and
very Puritan.
Yeah, very, very, very puritanical. And then you had kind of a loosening of that of the hyper morality of the Victorian period. Things kind of loosened up, and I think we're approaching a time where things are about to start tightening up again. And among millennials, I think you can see that, like a lot of the social justice warriors and stuff that you see among millennials, they're feeling a sense of moral outrage against things like racism and against what they would define as being exploitation. So what they're saying is that they want to get back to a more moral order.
But what you're saying happened 50 years ago. When I was in college 50 years ago, people were saying, I think soon again it's going to get back down to the rules again. And it did for a while, but then things started going crazy again. So
so I guess the thing I would say is the 60s, the sexual revolution was kind of the height of the or like, I guess maybe the beginning of the moral degradation of our place and time. And I think it's more. I think you can more look at it in terms of cycles than you can look at it in terms of
just like climate
increase.
And weather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want your controversy? We'll clip it.
Clip it.
No, but I guess the only reason I'm saying any of this is that I really do think, I think a lot of it is very cyclical, but I do think one of the things that happens is we do develop over time, you know, and things that we were more rigid about that we didn't need to be rigid about before. I think whenever things kind of tighten up again, I think that we've taken those new things into account where people are, where people that were treated poorly before aren't treated poorly in the new era that's kind of tightened up again, if that makes any sense. And I'd point to something like racism. Yeah, you know, like that was something that was still with us during the like Victorian period and the period after that. And then things loosened up. Whenever things tighten up again, I don't think racism is really going to be a thing. It's really it's really not that big of a thing now.
I feel like it's not a thing
right.
now, and that's why their narrative, right? They have to change because, dude, when we were growing up, right, and maybe it's just me, we just weren't racist. I don't know, like,
yeah,
no one cared. I don't know, like, I feel like it has to be. They're trying to make it a big thing, and no one really cares. I know there's racism. I get it. I would say there's a lot of people that are probably prejudiced on top of that, right? Which we talked about the difference between racism and prejudice. And I think there probably are a lot of prejudiced people out there. I get that. There's differences.
But racism has occurred within every community, within every ethnic group itself.
Oh, yeah.
And with other ethnic groups. Mm-hmm. So when we say racism, that is not black against white.
Correct.
Or whatever, French against Germans, this and that. Racism is a very complex issue.
Yeah.
And there was like Northern Ireland and Ireland, thousands of people died in that war and nobody ever heard about it very much, except back in the 70s and 80s when, you know, and I had a couple Irish students in my classes when I was teaching in Florida, and one girl's brother had his eyeball popped right out because the British had shot a bullet and it knocked his eye out. So they escaped Ireland because it was so big in the early 80s. It was so dangerous there in Northern Ireland. They left. So did hundreds and thousands of other people. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's racism in its own self. Mm-hmm. And it was based on British rule and Protestant versus Catholic. Mm-hmm. So when you discuss racism, there are many factors that cause racism and many factors that continue to make racism discussed, occur, whatever it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Irish are still fighting to this day. You're right. It's huge in the 80s.
Not too bad anymore.
Yep.
We were in Ireland. Interesting you said that because I thought the same thing. We were in October and they said Belfast has progressed to the level now where there is total peace for the last 70 years. And they're working on... And I went to Belfast with my wife, and it was a beautiful city. Oh, my God, the architecture was phenomenal. And that's where they used to build all the big ships. The Titanic was built there, and that was what they were famous for. And then with the problems between the British and the Irish and the British Isles government, it was a mess. Mm-hmm. But
a lot more. You just said you just
really
went
up on. It's really up. It's really up
nice.
And coming. And a girl told me that when I visited my family in Syracuse 4 years ago. She said that they go to Belfast every year. She goes, "You have to go now. It's very nice." So things are changing.
That's awesome.
Thank God. That's in Ireland.
Yes.
But the problem with the human race, it's going to start happening elsewhere, somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Even in the Philippines, there are 66 official languages that are spoken in the Philippines. Don't ask me a number of islands because I don't remember. It's a lot of islands. But even within their own culture, they're very united in many ways. But certain island nations have more different types of politics involved, and that can cause conflicts and problems.
Mm-hmm. Because people want to, at the end of the day, they want to be ruled at the smallest level possible.
Yeah, at the local level.
At the local level. So when they feel they're being taken advantage of by another area, even if it's at the local size, the city size, the county size, the state side, you know, we've seen this throughout history time and time again. That leads to problems, which I've always found interesting because in today's society, that's what I was trying to go at earlier, is we're making it more, like a global community, but people literally when we're even in our own neighborhoods, we're like, don't tell us what to do in our neighborhoods. Me and the neighbors can talk about it. This is what we want. You know what I mean? And then it goes from there. So it leads to conflict. And we're trying to mash people together. Like, we're all people. Yeah, but we're all people with different views, ethics, beliefs, and experiences that I can't even comprehend what someone in the middle class and the northeast, part of
Nebraska?
India is, I don't know. Why do I don't have a say
But
on that?
remember, Adam and Eve had 2 sons, and one killed the other one.
Exactly. There's only 4 of them bastards. And they couldn't even get past it. We're trying to do 8 billion. It's like,
We're talking about racism. Now we're talking about death.
Yeah,
It's like, whoa.
Well, and the thing is, as far as Ireland goes, and I might be oversimplifying it, but the British, the British market, the British developed an insatiable hunger for horse meat. Then they transitioned, instead of having an insatiable hunger for horse meat, they started loving beef. They started loving cattle. So what the British did was they invaded Ireland, and they ran all the Irish farmers off of their land. They rolled into Irish communities, and they ran all the native Irish off from all of their from all the land that they would farm on, and they would force them to go farm on the land that was rocky and poor.
And most Irish went into slavery.
Yes,
They
exactly.
became slaves for the British.
Yeah, exactly. And what ended up happening was,
Or indentured servants, if you want to call it that.
yeah, exactly. And the potato famine in Ireland happened during the 19th century. And the reason that the potato famine happened, that all the potatoes got blight and it wiped out the crop, first of all, the Irish were not able to eat beef because the British had taken all the cows, and the British had taken all the grazing land, and were raising the cows there so that they could export them back to England. And then then the Irish were having to grow their potatoes in very very poor soil. Now potatoes grow in very poor soil. They can thrive there, but they had to grow it in very very poor rocky soil, and it got a blight, and it wiped out the potato crop, and you had the potato famine. That blood is still to this day on the hands of the Brits, and the Brits did the same thing when it came to the Opium Wars in China. The British invaded China and held the emperor at gunpoint and forced him to allow the import of opium, one of the most addictive substances on planet Earth, just so that the British could extract tea from China, because the emperor of China, he didn't want to trade with the British.
Are you trying to demonize the English? Is that what's going on here?
Well, I'm just saying I'm not a very big fan of the Brits.
Got it. I just wanted to know your stance. Okay.
Yeah, but
Clip it.
yeah, clip it.
Got it.
Yeah, so we were talking about Ireland, but so
Vicky's like, what the fuck is going on?
yeah, so but the interesting thing about Ireland right now is that there's a political party. I forget what it's called. Is it called Féin? Is it called something? It's called something Féin, I think.
I'm not educated on it.
And it's a political party. It's in Northern Ireland.
I'm a very typical American, Shane. I do not know a lot about European politics. However, the Europeans know more about the Democratic, Republican, and Independent parties than most Americans know.
That makes sense.
So
That's the truth.
yeah. So the political party is called Sinn Féin, and what their whole goal is, their goal is to unite Ireland under one government, to reunite Northern Ireland with the Republic of Ireland.
Oh, okay. That was discussed on our tour.
Yes.
Sinn Féin.
Yeah, it's called Sinn Féin.
But if that does not happen, the European Union now is all changed. When we were in Ireland, Scotland, and England, most of the employees in restaurants, hotels, and buying tickets for attractions in the cities, different cities and towns, hardly any of them were Irish. Hardly any of them were Scottish. They just weren't. Hardly any of them were British. Well, England and the British Isles have a very large influx of Pakistanis, Saudis, Afghani, India, different parts of India. England's very noted for that.
Now, Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Uncle Matt.
Well, I forgot what I was saying now. But what was the question you said to me?
We were talking about Ireland. That political party is called Sinn Féin, and you were talking about the trip to Ireland.
But with the European Union now, the youth can travel to any European country that's part of the European Union, work and live there, and as long as you have your passport from your country, you're part of the European Union. So the entire continent of Europe is becoming very, very mingled with different people. Now, in Ireland, in Dublin, there were more than 100,000 Ukrainians that went into Ireland. So the next generation, a lot of the Irish kids are going to be half Irish and half Ukrainian.
Yeah.
That's how we lose culture.
Or with all the different, but I'm telling you, the European culture, in another 20 to 30 years, it's going to be so diverse that no one can pinpoint.
Exactly.
Or hopefully no one will pinpoint.
Yeah.
Their origin like in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we hope for in the future, since that was the question.
Well, you know, so
that was the original question.
So I actually like the idea of Italy being Italian, and Germany being German, and Spain being Spanish, and France being French. Like not artificially diluting their cultures. Now, I think immigration is a good thing for countries, and diversity is a good thing to a degree, but the influx of migrants you've had to Europe in such a short period of time, the sheer numbers, it is going to end up leading to Irish culture being becoming diluted, and same thing with Italy too, and France and Germany. And
what a man told me on the way to the hotel, our cab driver, he said that a lot of the Irish women with their kids were being forced out of their homes so that the Ukrainian and other immigrants could live in those places, and it was putting their own people out on the street. I'm like, San Francisco, maybe.
Yeah.
L.A.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a weird story for you.
I like weird stories.
All right, so in Serbia, so in Serbia, there like lightning struck, and there was this little blind baby that was born in like around the year like 1900 or something. And this little blind baby
in Serbia?
Yeah, in Serbia, which is the same place Nikola Tesla was from,
Correct.
But there's this little blind baby that was born like lightning struck or something. It was like lightning or like a tornado or like a tornado of lightning or something. Mm-hmm. And this little baby was born, and it was blind, and its name was Baba Vanga, and Baba Vanga claimed to be a prophet,
I thought you were say he was a ninja turtle.
Yeah, Baba Vanga?
Yeah, Baba Vanga.
When did he claim to be a prophet? How old was he?
First of all, it's a she. Please do not misgender her again.
Oh.
and she lived to be a little.
Her?
What
have we asked her? What her opinion is?
Well,
what she thinks she is?
She's since passed on. But she
that was 123 years ago.
All right, so I want for you to think about this. So if Nostradamus was a short little blind Slavic woman, then Baba Vanga would be Nostradamus.
All right.
And Baba Vanga just died like in the 90s or something, which I don't know if she predicted her own death or not. If she were a real psychic or whatever, then I would imagine that she would have. She predicted that by like 2050 or 2060 that Europe would be predominantly Muslim. And she made that prediction like, I don't know, probably like 60 years ago or something like that. Fact check me on that. About Baba Vanga, but she is regarded as being like the modern day Slavic blind version of Nostradamus. And I do think that's a real possibility that in 50 or 60 years, or maybe even less than that, the dominant religion in Europe will be Islam, and the dominant culture in Europe will end up being something that's Middle Eastern.
Islam is on the big rise from is it Pew?
Oh, Pew Research, right?
Pew Research. Yeah. And this was 4 years ago. I looked it up, that it was very much on the rise.
In the world right now...
It's the fastest growing religion, correct?
Yes. So in the world right now, for every I think for every one Christian that
We're not gonna get past that fucking thought.
Yeah. Sorry for it's the dang Jameson orange and then this Sexon whiskey that
It's good.
yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. What's this? Because it's called Sexon.
Sexton, right?
Oh, Sexton. Okay, but the no. So it's like for every one Christian in the world that dies, like 3 Muslims are born. And the thing is, when you're looking at like the future demographics of the world, those are the kind of numbers. Oh no, thanks. When you're looking at the future demographics of the world, those are the kind of numbers you want to look at. You want to look at how many of one group are being born in comparison to how many of one group are dying. You know, that's the clearest way that you can see that you can project growth. You know, growth or decline. And that's certainly happening. There are a lot of Muslims have been migrating to Europe since 2008 or 9, since all the troubles started in Syria. I think that was the first large group of immigrants that went to Europe. And again, I'm not saying I'm against immigration at all, but when you end up replacing like 3 or 4 or 5% of a country's population. When you end up supplanting them by a totally foreign group, you know, within like a 2 or 3 year time period, you're not able to have that melting pot effect happen. You know, and that's a really important thing. You know, you need to have
both are so staunch in their own culture that one has to. What do you call it when you kind of suppress someone? One has to like overpower. What's the
like overtake?
Yeah,
or
one has to overtake
like
the other
replace?
because they're so staunch in their 2 different cultures. It didn't have time to mix together naturally. You know what I mean? It wasn't like Ukrainians and they met these Irish women and it's so like one's Ukrainian, one's Irish. They have to coexist somehow.
But the
right?
Irish government's going to make them learn English and the Irish English, the Ukrainians.
Really?
Oh, yes. And in Germany, my niece is a assistant principal at a private school in Berlin, Germany.
Yeah.
And she used to work for the German government before that. And she was an assistant in helping people become acculturated
Like
with
the Syrians?
German culture. Any immigrant that came into Germany had to learn their process of things, the culture of the German people. And they give them a time limit to learn German fluently. And if you don't know German fluently after that, they'll boot you right out of the country.
How the fuck does anyone ever move to Germany then?
I'd be
Isn't
screwed.
that like the hardest language to learn? One of them?
No, all languages are hard.
Yeah, I guess.
Personally, I think the hardest one I've ever heard is Vietnamese. I hope I don't But I mean, they're all difficult.
You know, so one thing in the European Union that's going on is you're seeing there used to be trade barriers between the different European countries, and what those trade barriers did is it protected different industries in different countries. Like a lot of people don't know this, but Italy is still it's a very industrialized country. The northern part of Italy, there's a lot of industry up there, a lot of chemical factories, a lot of auto manufacturers and stuff.
Well, 90% of all of Italy's agriculture and economic growth and prosperity is in this. Probably the size of South Florida, from Sarasota down, maybe a little smaller. It's where all you have the Alps from France, Italy, and like Slovenia and all those countries all come down through all the Alps, Austria and all that, and they all leak into Italy. So they leak into this valley, and it's called the Po Valley.
Yes.
And in Italian, it's called the Pianura Padana. And because of all the water there, they have thousands of canals that can used for irrigation, so they can grow everything. So because they were always the agricultural capital of all of Italy, they were always prosperous. Where in central and southern Italy, you've got very rocky, much more difficult type soils. So goats and cattle are okay, but they struggle a lot more. So the problem with Italy is the geography, and what can grow there has always been the problem. One of the problems. The other problem is the northern Italians are more Germanic in origin.
They're just Germans, yeah.
They're Lombards, right?
And-
Is what they are.
Well, everything.
Yeah.
Lombardia, Piemontese, the French, the Germans, I mean, they're different DNA, kind of. The southern Italians are more, just all Italian. Maybe in certain areas of Italy, a little Turkish, Greek. Sicily is like Greek, Arabic, and Italian, and German. The Visigoths.
The
went down
Visigoths
there.
conquered it.
And I've met Sicilian women with total blonde hair and blue eyes, and you swear,
They're Sicilian. Yeah, they will.
and they are Sicilian.
Yep.
Sono siciliana. So, yeah, that's.
Well, so there used to be protections on national industries in Europe. Like the Italian government used to be able to say, we're going to put up tariffs to protect our auto manufacturing industry.
What year was this?
Like in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
But with the European Union growing more and more powerful, none of the countries are allowed to do that. So what's happening is all the industry, it's slowly drying up throughout the rest of Europe, and all the industry is going to Germany. And Germany is getting all these migrants from all these other countries that are willing to work for very, very little money. And so what you're seeing happen in Europe is you're seeing all of these industries that used to provide good paying jobs throughout the European continent. They're drying up in different countries. It's already happened in Spain to a large degree. That's what happened to Greece like 10 years ago.
Well, the pigs, right?
Yeah. Oh, the pigs nations. Yeah. Portugal,
It was
Italy,
Portugal,
Greece, and Spain.
It was Portugal,
Poland?
Italy, Ireland,
Yes.
Greece.
Greece,
Serbia.
Spain. It was Portugal, right?
And Spain.
No, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. They were earlier. Yeah. Holy shit, I can't spell pigs right now. Yes.
But so and this is the thing. Like in Eastern Europe, a lot of those economies are still booming and growing. Like you talk about Poland, and you talk about Serbia and a lot of those places. They still have a lot of native manufacturing, and the reason for that is
They don't have immigration at the scales of the rest of Europe.
Well, not just that, but they more recently entered the European Union. So for some of these other countries that have had their industries being drained for like 20 or 25 years, they've only had like 10 or 15 years of their industries have been drained. And you're going to end up seeing that continue. It's all draining into Germany. But the problem is all the industry going to Germany, it was all based upon Germany having access to cheap energy. But
they don't anymore.
That's not the case anymore because we blew up their pipeline to Russia, So it's
Never ruled the Germans out.
No, yeah.
They're a very, very intellectual group of people.
They
They do a lot of things in their country. Oh, I don't want to get into this.
Okay.
I think that they do handle things a lot better than we do in this country. But there are many situations in our country that are different from theirs, so it's not able to. You can't always just do what other countries do and make it work for you. There's a lot of complications, and then I won't discuss that this evening, ladies and gentlemen.
I will. I think I know where you're going with that. I will concur, though. I'll just say that.
It's just too deep. We don't know what we're being told. You look at facts. You look at data. I'm a 43-year educator. Everything was data, and I was a school administrator. Look at the data. And there's so many students in today's schools that still can't do multiplication tables by the end of third grade, which we were required to do. And we had no calculators.
Yeah.
And reading. They graduate from high school and can't read and pass a reading test. But I have one thing to say to that, though. The reading test, I saw the Florida reading test when I monitored it. I cannot talk about the content in it. It was difficult.
It was difficult?
Very difficult.
See, that's not fair. Because...
And I had to give it to a group of ELL students who had only been in the United States for 2 years or less.
That's bullshit. Yeah.
and they forced me to give them the test. I'm like, oh my God, why are you doing this to them? Because they want the data. And what's the data? Who looks at the data? Is it the state? That's the government? Who looks at the data? Mm-hmm. It made me sick. It was just painful to do that to them. And this one student walks up to me and he showed me a problem and it had a word in it. I can't say the word. I don't want to advertise it. I didn't know what the word meant. Mm-hmm. And my associate's I asked my assistant principal afterwards. I said, and I didn't tell her it was related to the test because you can't do that. Mm-hmm. Like a week later, I asked her, "What's the meaning of this word to you?" And she goes, "I have no clue."
Yep.
So that was the main word in the question that they had to answer about this whole paragraph.
And no one knew what the hell it was.
It was ridiculous.
That's what they do. I don't get it. No. And I think so. We hold standards, right, to all these things. The average article that we are exposed to on any given day. Yes, we're recording still. Yeah, the average article we're exposed to on any given day is written at a 6th grade level, right? But we give these tests to people that are written way above a 6th grade level. Like, and we expect them, like,
That's why you have level 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Mm-hmm. In Hillsborough County, your levels are 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Mm-hmm. And then I was asked as a teacher to combine groups of students in my foreign language class by the 5s, the 3s, and the 1s, the 4 and the 2. Put them in groups of 5 or 6. And space them out so that a weak one's with a strong one and a mediocre one's with an upper mediocre one. So it will engage the students in learning. Mm-hmm. Well, that didn't quite work. It did work for some, but a lot of my students came up to me and said, "Mr. Kennedy, we're doing all the work. We've got A's. Why are they ending up with B's?" Mm-hmm. They didn't do anything to help us with the project. We did it all, and they wrote the answers in, and that's all they did. And you know what I said to them? Be prepared for the future. Be prepared for the workforce. Let this be a lesson to you. I totally agree with everything you are telling me. Mm-hmm. Everything you say to me, I totally agree with you 100%. But in the workforce, you're going to have to put up with this. So you need to know how to deal with it.
Yep, it's a life lesson. It's one of the truest life lessons you could actually give them. I mean, I think that's another problem is that we in the school system, and the school can't train you for every little thing, but we need to give a little more like real world context, like you just said, right? No, you're gonna put up with this bullshit. You're gonna run into this in any industry. It's not even industry specific. I don't care what you're gonna go into. You will run into this. And the way you explained it, a lot of teachers would shy away from that, right? Or a lot of educators, or it doesn't matter where you're at, would shy away from that and try to sugarcoat it or go around it.
Well, here's an example. Mm-hmm. The Americans say Asian students outscore American students and these Asian countries and these other foreign countries outscore the United States. I'm not going to say a number, mm-hmm. but it's way higher than what American students do. But here's the difference. In certain Asian countries, you've got 90% of the people that are poor and 10% of the population that control the entire wealth. Mm-hmm. Those are the kids that go to school that are tested.
Just that 10%.
That are trained for nuclear mm-hmm. physicists, physicians, whatever. Mm-hmm. What do you call that? Can't think of the mathematical term for this. Anyway, that's what happens, and that's just unfair.
We're not accounting for 90% of the population's test scores. Absolutely
right. It's an unfair judgment, and we, as I said, we educate the mass. These countries, if you're very poor in Europe, which is very rare because most students go to school, but if you're poor, you'll work on the farm with your parents and this and that, mm-hmm. but. And I don't want to get into this education field right now, but the problem is that a lot of our high schools have eliminated woodworking, home ec, and just classes that young people that come to this country can learn. They can learn a lot from that.
100%. I was always very interested in those things. I took ag and stuff like that. So I get to experience things that I never experienced growing up in Southern California on the beach.
Is that where you took your ag courses?
No, came to Florida when I was older, and we had ag, and I was like, I've never been around, like, even though there's a lot of agriculture in Southern California, don't get me wrong, a lot. I'm just saying, I grew up in a city.
I've been there.
Yeah, okay. So I grew up in a city, but then I came out here, and at that time, Polk County, especially where I was, it was in Mulberry. Most people probably don't. Lakeland, you know Mulberry, I'm sure.
I do.
Okay, yeah. So Mulberry, it's it's an ag school. That's what it is. So I got to experience.
So was Kathleen.
Yes, and I got to experience these things, and it was like.
That's where I went to school.
Did you go to school with Kathleen?
Kathleen Junior, Kathleen Senior.
Nice, and that literally is the ag school. Like that's what you guys are known for.
And guess what? I worked with a lot of students that had 3 classes of ag, and they didn't have like all these other classes because they may have been slow or they were just very poor at reading comprehension. Mm-hmm. Come to find out, most of them grew greenhouses and are multimillionaires today.
They're in the green movement.
They were into it, and that's what they wanted. But people didn't criticize that years ago. I don't think the way they do today. I think that when I taught in Hillsborough County and in Clark County in Las Vegas, the trend was for kids to go to college, kids to go to college, kids to go to college. And they were pumping it because if the high schools require certain courses to prepare them for the colleges, then the college enrollment will increase. And they'll get student loans, and the banks will make money off them.
Yep. keep milking that cow.
Exactly. So I forgot what I was going to say now about the. Sorry.
No, you're good.
About the high school. There was something I was going to say about the high school.
That they were trying to transition them more towards college when they had other options.
And there was an agriculture class where I taught in Hillsborough County, but the majority of schools have just eliminated these woodworking, wood shop. How about air conditioning repair? How about they have them at adult ed centers all over the place, and that's where kids go. They finally figure out, I'm not going to go to this high school. I'm just going to go learn a trade, and they're very successful.
Very successful.
But I'm a little upset as a 43-year educator that not enough credit and expectations is giving to these industrial programs as they are college. And I'm going to say one thing. Most students I talk to that graduate from college either major in psychology or political science. If you guess those two, you're 80% correct every time you say that. Or business. Yet every job they have related in their field has nothing to do with political science and psychology.
Nothing.
That's another topic, another time.
Another topic, another time.
So I had to take care of a technical problem a few minutes ago. When I sat back down, you guys were talking about milking something.
Out of all the things you could have caught, that's where you came in.
Yeah, so that's what I sat down. But it sounds like you guys had we're talking about a very interesting angle of education. Discussing about how there's been this big emphasis. You were just saying a few minutes ago that there was this big emphasis on you got to go to college. You got to go to college. If you don't go to college, then you're really not going to amount to anything.
And I was in an inner city school in Hillsborough County, so half the students could have given a flying leap at the moon about what they were hearing.
It's true.
It was terrible. There was blah, 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 blah. All right, well, my college shirt. And they're like, I mean, it was really like a beep.
I'm
not making fun of my students. No, I'm not making fun of my students. They just had zero interest in hearing that.
Well, because it was the narrative for so long.
Well, no, because a lot of them came from families where you don't know if their parents were drug addicts or identity theft or arrested because there was a high percentage of arrests within the community. And who did they live with? Was it a mother, father, auntie, grandmother, grandfather? There was all sorts of barriers that some of the kids that I dealt with just didn't look happy. I had never seen such a group that didn't look happy, and I saw that increase with every year that cell phones were out with the kids. That's another topic.
For
Another
time.
evening.
Yes. So you mentioned something interesting about the connection between kids going to college and accumulating debt a few minutes ago. You said it's almost like a factory to send the kids to college and then get them to go and borrow money and then get them to go borrow money to get like a mortgage or something.
Well, here's the deal. Students can receive a full scholarship from any school towards any college. And they will have a full ride scholarship. That does not mean that someone has to pay for their room and board and their meals. Now, if you're an athlete or the best harpist in the state, or a celloist, or there's a specialty need, archery, or you're the number one swimmer in the whole southwestern area of the U.S. If there's a definite need, and that's an athlete again, but it's not necessarily an athlete, but if you have the ability to satisfy a college, they're gonna want you. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. And it will pay your full tuition. But most students, our son got a full ride scholarship to the University of Arizona. And as a matter of fact, scored the highest score ever in the history of the University of Arizona on the music test. The reason I know that is because the secretary came out and looked at me and she said, Dr. So-and-so, I don't want to say his name, is going to talk to your son. He's going to offer him a deal. And she said, but I have to tell you something. And I thought, uh-oh, what was it? She said, she says, I've been here for 40 years. I have never seen a score this high in the history of the university, ever, ever, ever.
Wow.
So my son scored the highest score on the test for the entrance music exam of University of Arizona.
That is awesome.
I remember this. I don't know. This is probably like 10 years ago. I came out and stayed with you guys for a few days. Remember, I went out to California on business.
I sure did.
And I remember. I remember. Should we use his name? Well, Chris. People
My
won't.
son?
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris. So yeah, we're not going to be throwing his personal information out there, like his social security number or his
blood
size
type.
or anything.
Yeah.
Chris is cool.
Yeah.
I think he's O negative.
Wait, now does that mean that so is O negative the universal donor or the universal receiver?
I don't know. I always get confused. I'm O positive. That's all I know.
I'm O positive too.
Oh God.
Positive and negative make a match.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah.
So you know, I remember I was so astounded when Chris showed me. I don't know, like he had written like 200 or 300 songs.
Oh yeah.
And Chris was just strumming his guitar, and Chris didn't really think it was that big of a deal. You know, Chris is not one to toot his own horn, you know. But I mean, he was just sitting there like, yeah, this is what I've been doing. Because and the whole reason he was showing me all this stuff is because I was asking him, so what have you been up to lately? You know, I haven't seen you since like two Christmases ago or something.
And for those of you listening, my son opened up for Steve Winwood when he opened up the brand new Brooklyn Bowl in Las Vegas, Nevada. And he opened up for One Republic, Lit, Blues Travelers. He was a hot item, and him and his band were on the marquee in front of the Paris Hotel for a solid week at the opening of their new album.
That is awesome.
So,
yes. Yeah, I remember that. My biggest story with him is I remember
it was called Level Up, and the top song on the Level Up was played on the playlist at the Super Bowl in Miami 3-4 years ago.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. The first time I met Chris, we were at an Applebee's, and I'll never forget. It was karaoke night.
Yes.
And dude, they did a competition, or not a competition. What do you call them? Where you like everyone's singing, but they pick winners. Not. I know that sounds like competition. What do you call it? Shit.
Like a contest or something?
Contest,
Or
that's it. Yeah. So they did a contest, and everyone's going up singing karaoke, and it's horrible, right? It's an Applebee's in Lakeland, Florida, right? We're all smashed, and he went up there, and all you've been hearing all night is, and I this is just a testament to his voice. All you've been hearing all night is dog shit. Right, everyone's up there and they're like, "Oh, Allah." I think you and I did. You did Piano Man.
Yeah,
and
it
I did
butchered it.
I did like Crocodile Rock. Well, he goes up there and he does. I'll never forget. It was a Journey song, and he went up and he did Journey, and oh my God, that place instantly went from everyone just kind of hearing this.
That happened in Las Vegas. Every time he sang Journey, people were just pouring in.
That place went silent.
Yeah.
And you heard nothing but Chris, and half the girl. Well, he's married now. I don't know. Was that half the girls in that place where I was like, dude, this guy's gonna be my best friend.
Well, the Holiday Inn, Chris sang there one night, and the bartender there, he said that a lot of the famous groups, super famous groups, have been playing there for years. He says, I've been here for 24 years as a bartender. And when Chris got up and sang, he looked at me. He called me over. He says, "Who is this kid?" I said, "My son." He said, "I have to tell you, Dad." 24 years working here, I've had the Platters, you name it, 60s groups, everybody that's been there for year after year after year at that hotel. He says, I have never heard anything like this, not even close. And he bought him drinks the rest of the night.
Yes. That is awesome. That is awesome. You said that was at the hotel over there off Florida Avenue?
Yeah.
Where the Detroit Tigers office is. I think it's called the Swan.
The Swan, right?
Like
It's right behind where Cheddar's is.
So now that I said it's the Swan, you'll never find that bartender because probably got fired after saying that. So.
We gave out too much personal info.
Yeah, we fucked up, boys.
Yeah, they're like bartender, Holiday Inn, Florida Avenue, Polk County.
When he sings Journey, oh my Lord.
Yeah. And the thing is, that's...
Well, when he played on the Strip in Las Vegas, I didn't mean to interrupt you. When he played on the Strip in Vegas, these radio producers were coming in from L.A., mid-Nevada, California, across the Mojave Desert. They were tons of them pouring in with their radio. Please, we want to play your music now. He couldn't because he wasn't officially granted by the whatever music society. You can't play him unofficially like that. Now, a couple of them did a sample. They did samples. They weren't supposed to, and they did. But he was just surrounded by these people in Vegas on the Strip. It was amazing. But you know what? There was one night he performed in this one thing, and the girl that it was called the Link in Las Vegas.
I remember that.
And this girl waitress came up, and she knew him because she always dealt with him. I said, "He's almost there." I forgot her name. I said, "But he's almost there." She looked at me and she said, "Oh, really? And then what?" I took a deep breath. I had never stopped and thought in my life, she's right. What about then what? One Republic got a contract, and then they dumped them a few months later, and they had to fight their way to get back the second time. So people can create you and dump you a month later, and you'll sign a contract and get nothing. And he had a job. He had a very important job with the cable company. Had a great job with them, and he couldn't forfeit that like the other band members. A couple of their other band members could, but he couldn't. But it was that's what happened.
And that is what they do. There's a lot of, I'm right outside of L.A. in California. It's not uncommon. You hear these stories of these people that were actors or actresses, and they get that, they get that show or they get that thing, and it never even comes on TV. You never even see it.
Oh, you're told you're going to participate, and then all of a sudden, sorry, you got cut.
Yeah, you got cut.
Yeah.
Or you film it and then you're never
You get
even in
cut.
it. You watch the whole
Yep.
video and you're not even fucking in it. And you're like, what? And
Yeah.
and these are people that were like, they made it.
Yeah.
They were, or what we say made it, but like you said. And then what does that mean? He was singing the whole time and people loved him.
And she was such a nice girl, pretty girl, and just as sweet as she could be. She goes, and then what? And I said, you know what? And I told my son, he cried one time in front of me and said, I was almost there. And I said, Christopher, God has a plan for everything.
Correct.
Everything happens for a reason. And he's very prosperous today, and he's very happy.
Yep.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I
So
like
David Bowie, no.
So full circle.
So we're bringing it home.
Nothing's gonna touch you in these golden years.
So
Golden years.
So our big thing is we do need to all, before we do another podcast together, we have to watch Labyrinth. That's on everyone's
We
agenda
need to watch
now.
Labyrinth. Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
can we watch it together?
Yes.
Yes.
I may have questions.
Yes. And we will make sure that we're on the right mood to watch Labyrinth. Okay? We'll make sure we're good to go. Labyrinth is going to be awesome. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can have a little bit more. I'm telling you, that orange Jameson, that's one of the best. I think that might be one of my favorite whiskeys I've ever had. And what is it? This is Sex On?
I've always
Sexton.
Sex.
Oh, Sexton.
Ain't nobody having
Sexton.
sex on anything.
Yeah, you
Sexton.
horny bastard. You horny-
We're here to talk about issues.
Well, so what as far as education goes, what is the solution?
Let's close that.
Oh, okay.
There is no solution.
Yeah, I'm with him. There's no solution, dude.
So that's what we'll finish on. Is for education
I
there is
say
no
let's
solution.
discuss that next podcast.
Let's do it.
Yes,
I like
because
it.
it's too. And all of you who have listened to us this entire time, I salute you.
Salute
Yes.
you.
I would have never been able to have done the same thing. There's no way. My attention span is. So if you did, God bless you. I thank you all. And this is my first podcast ever in my life. So I hope that you join us next time. Michael Kennedy, check it out.
Oh,
And
check it out.
And so we'll talk about how to solve the education problem in Labyrinth
In Labyrinth.
and how the two are related.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Because the solution.
The solution is in Labyrinth.
Yep. The solution to solving the education problem is in
correct.
Labyrinth, and the solution to understanding Labyrinth is in the education system.
I agree. Till next time. Love you guys.
Oh,
Love you all.
Here, one last thing.
Vi vogliamo bene. Los queremos mucho. Nous vous aimons beaucoup.
That was Italian and French, and you're doing Spanish now?
I did all three.
Did you already do Spanish?
Yeah.
I missed it. Holy shit. I heard the
You just-
Italian, I heard the French.
You didn't miss it. You just didn't perceive it.
Well, I don't know Spanish at all.
Oh no, nous vous vogliamo bene. I forgot the Italian, or did I? You'll have to let us know before the next podcast.
Next podcast.
Well, yeah. Comment.
All right,
Comment. And
let us
subscribe.
know and comment.
We need to start telling people to subscribe, Nico.
Well, it's not like they don't fucking know, man. If they like it, they're gonna subscribe. You don't have to tell them.
They don't know. They don't know to
Like, oh
subscribe.
shit, I forgot to do that. Click. No.
You know, we've had like tens of people watch our podcast, and never once have you told them to subscribe.
Tens of people.
Our goal is to get up to 20.
we would like to grow by 100%.
20.
Big goal.
20.
All right,
All
gentlemen.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. See you guys next
Till
time.
next time.
Peace out.
Peace out, homies.
Yep. One finger fuck. Two fingers fuck. All right.